rated T to M. Hey, want to hear a PC Game Pass ad? I'll take your silence as a yes. Want new games on day one like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2? I thought so. How about unlocking all the League of Legends champions when you link your Riot Games account? All for one low monthly price? Well, guess what? We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Stalker 2 available November 20th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. And that's the end of the script.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we just got finished watching the Detroit Lions escape from the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football, and now her eyes have shifted towards this Sunday at Levi Stadium, 1:25 p.m. on the Pacific Coast, and we are looking ahead towards the Niners and the Chicago Bears matchup, NFL Week 14. And I'll tell you what, I am oddly optimistic about this game, and I'll tell you why in a second. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that 5-star review on the audio podcasting platforms. Hope you had a wonderful week. I know there's been a lot of negativity around the San Francisco 49ers for a variety of reasons, many of them justified. No Jordan Mason in this game, no Christian McCaffrey for the rest of the season. It feels like this is, as Mike Silver of The Athletic called it, a season from hell. And, it's hard to say that's not the case when the tagline for this game really is, the San Francisco 49ers trying to keep their playoff hopes alive, but in reality, this is a battle of last place teams. The San Francisco 49ers are 5-7. They have lost 3 consecutive games, and as of right now, December 5th of 2024, they have a 7% chance to make the playoffs according to NFL.com. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bears, they're 4-8. They've lost 6 consecutive games. Yes, they were 4-2 at one point. They have lost 6 consecutive games, and honestly, they are one of the more dysfunctional franchises. You have the New York Jets for sure. You have some troubled teams like the Dolphins and the Saints because of their cap situations and whatnot. And I'm sure there's more teams involved in there somewhere. But ultimately, the Chicago Bears, despite having the number 1 overall pick last year, Caleb Williams, or in this past year's draft, you have Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, this year's number 9 overall pick, and a really stacked defense, somehow still dysfunctional. They fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus, after, was it last week's? It must have been last week's game, Thanksgiving. A terrible loss, just clock management, just mismanagement. Why are you not calling timeouts? What are you doing out there? They fire him. They have now promoted the man. Earlier in the year, when they fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, they promoted a new guy, I'm forgetting his name, to the offensive coordinator. Now they fired Matt Eberflus. That guy is the interim head coach. So again, a massive, massive amount of dysfunction. A lot going on. This is 2 massive teams where you're just like, what could have been, what should have been. A lot of people talked about early in the year the Chicago Bears are going to be the dark horse for a playoff spot, and it really hasn't come to fruition for a variety of reasons. And the San Francisco 49ers, it's been a mess. It has been a hodgepodge of what the heck, what happened, what else can go wrong. It is Murphy's Law almost every single game, whether it's the offense, whether it's the defense, whether it's on the field, off the field, special teams, doesn't matter. Anything that can go wrong has gone wrong for the San Francisco 49ers. And before we dive into the game itself, I want to get to the YouTube comments here. Bobo says, of course, they, being San Francisco, are going to try to say they're going to try to win. But I know, and you know, they're finished. Meanwhile, Kim says, I believe, if that isn't the exact, if that is not the pulse of where fans are right now, if I believe in Kim, and Bobo's like, look, we know it's over. Just call it a day. They're like, what are we doing here? Bobo also says here, until Kyle Shanahan knows how to close out teams in the fourth quarter and learn how to manage the clock and overtime rules, we will never win another championship. I don't want to make declarative statements in Week 14 of a very, very, very lost season, but I do want to focus on this game because I want to be very clear that, like I said to begin, I am oddly optimistic as to what San Francisco could do. Now, that is not to be indicative of what I think of the Rams or the Cardinals or the Seahawks. If those teams win, then it means nothing. I still feel oddly optimistic despite losing Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, Kevin Givens, and seems to be not going to have Nick Bosa or Trent Williams in this game. Maybe it's because I've kind of accepted that, I mean, hey, season's over with. You might as well, the pressure's off, the worry's off. I just feel like, yeah, okay, cool. Now we have a chance to win. Maybe that's how they feel. Maybe I'm just demoralized and kind of been like, I'm accepting the fate that this year has brought to me and on us as fans and as teams. But I want to begin by talking about a comment that was made by Mike Florio this past week. And you know Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, one of the biggest Niners, despisers in the space that is NFL media, just makes stuff up to hate this team. During the Tom Brady saga of will they, won't they, he was just bringing up Tom Brady of, well, the Niners might get Tom Brady, despite them going to multiple NFC Championship games without him, and had it been 3 or 4 years post them trying or failing to sign Tom Brady. Just one of those guys that just kind of brings up every single thing wrong with your franchise or every single draft miss or quarterback miss or loss you've had, and you're like, hey, brother, can you just give it a break for a second? But Mike Florio, who is always fond of keeping the San Francisco 49ers name and Kyle Shanahan's name in his mouth, he said, I believe it was on a podcast or maybe his own show, I'm not too sure, I don't listen to him, that he was kind of throwing around the idea of the Chicago Bears trading for Kyle Shanahan. Now, it's ironic, these two teams face off this week, and I want to say with all of my chest that the Chicago Bears can call the San Francisco 49ers and say, hey, John, hey, Jed, would Kyle be open to being traded? And would he be open to coaching the Bears? And I can almost guarantee you that the laughing that would be heard from the other side of the line would be so embarrassing by the Bears. They'd have to fire their GM. You'd have to fire the head coach again, which they don't have one currently, although they do, but don't really. You have to tear down the entire roster, it almost seems like, if you want to bring Kyle Shanahan in. And what it would cost to get Kyle, we're talking 2 first-round picks, Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson. It is a full-on ransom. This is not a Sean Payton, no, I want to leave, so I'll go for a first-round draft pick. This is not, other John Gruden to the Buccaneers. This is Kyle Shanahan, one of the most winning coaches, and I get it, he hasn't won the big one, but one of the most winningest coaches of the past 5+ years that has revitalized and almost changed the way we play offense in the NFL. You want that guy for your team, for your young quarterback? Give us literally your entire roster. Then they can start the conversation. So, just asinine. Why? And even then, Kyle would have to say yes to that. Why would Shanahan want to leave what he's built? He has a quarterback he wants. He has Debo and Kittle and Juszczyk and Trent and Fred Warner. I get it's a down year and we're frustrated and those guys' futures are certainly up in the air. But Kyle has been able to literally concoct and construct the exact roster he wants. Again, in a down year, mind you, but this is what Kyle wanted. He's got everything he's ever wanted in San Francisco. He has complete and utter control. The idea the Bears, even if they called, which, go ahead, they will get laughed off the phone. And even if Kyle entertained the idea of leaving San Francisco for the Windy City, oh my God, like the amount it would cost to make that happen would be crazy. But although I will say this, a lot of you would probably say yes. Trade Kyle Shanahan. Frank Weber says here, Bobo, it's going back to his comments in regards to the fourth quarter and not winning a championship, and Bobo probably being one of the biggest Kyle Shanahan detractors in the YouTube comments every single show. Frank saying, basically what you mean, Bobo, is being a coach. Be a coach, close games out. So I think Frank agrees with you, Bobo. It certainly seems that way. But I really don't think that Kyle was going to trade, or San Francisco is going to even open the idea of trading Kyle Shanahan. And I get it. Many of you out there say, well, we'll just trade Kyle and get Ben Johnson. If it was only that easy. If it was only that easy, folks. Kim says here that I believe we will be back next year. We have been here before and come back in the next season. I would agree with you, Kim. I feel like that's what's going to happen. At least that's the fingers crossed. You hope that can happen. A lot, depends on what happens in the offseason and whatnot. But it does feel like that, the Niners just need a year to recoup and recover and get back to who they are next year. I'm hoping that's the case for you, Kim. Bobo says here, Kyle would take Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa to Chicago with him. Yeah, I mean, he'd definitely start plucking players away. Some of them maybe you'd want to leave. Deebo Samuel, Kyle Juszczyk, maybe a George Kittle in 2 years' time. But they're so rare. Like Frank says here, coaching trades are so rare in the modern era. The price of the contracts are crazy. Like, yeah, like Jed just gave Kyle a new contract. Was it last year? Like, I mean, that's why it's going to cost a ton to get Kyle to leave San Francisco. But Keys asks here, before we get into the game itself, and I get it, we're 11 minutes in. We'll dive into the game here in a second, I promise you. Keys says, what's up, Sterling? Kyle said he was happy with Nick Sorensen. Does that mean he's not getting fired? I mean, you can be happy with your wife and still be upset at her, right? Still, okay. I love my wife. Don't mean sometimes I love her and I'm not a little peeved at her. Now, that isn't to say I don't think Kyle Shanahan views Nick Sorensen on the same level as his wife. I also just think that Kyle isn't a head coach, isn't a GM per se, if you will, that is going to outright just be like, no, that guy sucks. No, I'm unhappy. He realizes that they have a slim and bleak chance to go to the playoffs, and it's not the time to start tearing down people in the room. Now, yes, if, when it's all said and done, I really believe that Nick Sorensen's probably going to be on his way out. There's been small signs throughout the year. One of them, being Shanahan calling a timeout on defense. That's rare in itself. John Chapman this morning or yesterday did just a big middle finger to Nick Sorensen. It was on Twitter, and I'm sure it was on YouTube. It was hilarious. Him just being like, "You're a jackass, dude. You have no idea what you're doing." So if John Chapman sees that, if there are people that see that online, and to credit to John and many others that do stuff like that and break down film and whatnot, Kyle certainly sees it. It just feels like it's coaching talk. You're never gonna hear a head coach disparage his quarterback, even if that quarterback throws 5 interceptions in a game. Shanahan had every opportunity to tear down Jimmy Garoppolo on certain games. And they won a lot with him here, but he never once tore him down. If they did, it was in private in the media. And or not in the media. It's private, and it's in the room by yourself, and it's with the team and whatnot. It's not going to be in front of the whole roster. That's not what you do. That's not what you do to your quarterback. It's not what you do to even a guy you want to get fired, right? So even last year, with Steve Wilkes, it took about until week 8 until the wheels kind of started turning on firing Steve Wilkes. And, I think this year and last year are so different because I think last year Kyle sensed hey, this is the year. We are rolling. All cylinders are going. We're feeling it. We got to get healthy again. Sure, during that stretch of time they lost those 3 games in a row, but it's man, this is the year. And it really was the year. They should have won last season. I think that's why Kyle was a little desperate and a little more vocal about his displeasure with Steve Wilks, because he knew that if they didn't get things changed, they weren't going to win, and obviously they didn't. But they were there. And I also think that this one's different, too. Like, don't forget that Nick Sorensen was not Shanahan's first choice. He wasn't his second choice. He was the fallback option. And I think Kyle realizes that. You know, he's not going to go out there and crush Nick Sorensen for kind of falling into a job he probably wasn't ready for. And that's not Nick Sorensen's fault. That's honestly Kyle's fault and the place the organization was in. Like, you decided to fire Steve Wilks. Maybe that was right. Maybe it was wrong. I'd probably say it was right. That said, you wanted Belichick. You wanted Jeff Ulbrich. Those guys said no. The Jets said no, you can't have Ulbrich. It was, okay, crap. Nick Sorensen, you're the defensive coordinator. It was like, oh, okay. Brandon Staley, get in there. Could he fire Sorensen now and put in Brandon Staley in there? They're kind of working in tandem. I think if one goes, they both kind of have to go, unfortunately, which maybe isn't a bad thing. But I just think it's Kyle being kind and honest, realizing like this falls on me more than anybody. Like, sometimes like you're just not ready for a job. A lot of people I know have declined promotions because I'm not ready for it. My father did that, and it cost us money. And then later he was ready, and now he makes a bunch of money as a foreman. So that happens. I just think Nick Sorensen kind of fell into a job he wasn't ready for yet, and Kyle's like, I'm not going to kill this kid, albeit he's a man, because it's my fault, and I'll kind of eat that bullet and live with that. But that said, I do think he's getting fired. As Calachito says here, I have a hard time believing Nick Sorensen's brought back. There's too many options out there now. Like, looking ahead to the offseason, you're going to have a chance at Robert Saleh again if you want that. There's Jeff Ulbrich, who you wanted this past offseason. He's probably going to get fired by the Jets, and you can maybe look at him. I know it's going to sound weird, but maybe you look at the Bears and Matt Eberflus, who they just fired as their head coach. He's a pretty good defensive coordinator. Like, the defense ain't the problem out there. It's the offense and the time management stuff. You go get a defensive guy that can do that stuff and maybe shouldn't be a head coach, but can be a defensive coordinator. Like, Eberflus makes a lot of sense. I don't know how highly he'll be touted out there, but I think that makes a lot of sense. Calachito says Jim Schwartz. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Schwartz would want to leave for another defensive coordinator job. You'd have to change the scheme a little bit. That's where kind of things get tricky. Like, do you want to change the scheme again? You tried it with Wilks. It kind of worked, then it didn't work, and then it almost worked the entire way, then it didn't. I think Kyle wants to bring back and kind of get back to what he's been doing with Ryans and Saleh. And that was supposed to be Sorensen, but, you know, Sorensen plays a familiar scheme. It's just not a great coach running it. So it's a little different. You know, it's like, okay, well, there's familiarity here, and you can survive on some games and some plays, but ultimately, you know, when you have a guy playing nickel when the opposing team has 6 offensive linemen in, that's like, okay, like, where's your headspace at? Like, this is not adding up what's going on. I think if they want to run the same scheme, Saleh, Ulbrich make a lot of sense. I'd even, honestly, like, he's probably not going to want to leave, but I'd be calling teams about Brian Flores and just saying, like, hey, you know, what's the idea? Like, you want a big pay raise? You want to leave Minnesota? And now he may say no, and I wouldn't doubt that, but I think the Niners are in a place where they kind of have to do some poking and prodding and making some calls. And whether it's Belichick or Ulbrich or Saleh, Eberflus, like, don't be afraid to get a little desperate in a good way. Like, Nick Sorensen was desperate in a bad way. I don't think Flores will leave, but, like, don't be afraid to start calling teams. Jim Schwartz, right? Calachito mentioned Jim Schwartz. You got to call them rounds. Like, hey, like, do you want to let Jim leave, or what's going on there? So it all depends. But let's finally dive into the Bears and Niners this Sunday, 1:25 at Levi Stadium. And Excuse me. I had that cough still from Thanksgiving. But we're powering through. Kind of have to, kind of like the San Francisco 49ers have to. How do the Niners kick the trend that has been the year from hell? Can they bounce back this Sunday against the Chicago Bears? And it all starts to me with the offense. The offense, I think has been, and I've said it over and over again this year, the defense hasn't been great. It's been good enough at times. The last 2 games, obviously not. But the offense, I think, has been a big problem this year for a variety of reasons. I talked to you plenty about the offensive line struggles and whatnot, how they just don't do the fundamentals well. Guys aren't getting open. And it's been kind of a, it feels like they're just kind of stuck in the mud, where they're getting 13 points and 16 points, and they're getting 20, but the other team is just getting 23. They're getting 20. And it feels like San Francisco is always one step behind. They're right there on the doorstep, but can never really kind of put their foot to the floor and take over a football game.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight. Happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the recent play of Brock Purdy. Now, it's obviously not all Brock Purdy's fault. There's been so much discourse about Brock of, will you pay him? Will you not pay him? How much will you pay him? He's going to get paid. And he's going to get paid here. Unless something insane happens in the offseason, which you never know. The Niners take big swings. Brock's a guy. And I think that for Brock, he'll tell you this. He cannot play as bad as he played against the Bills and expect to win football games. Now, it was snowing and it was wet. And, okay, you can forgive one game, albeit okay, that's rain and snow aren't your friend there, Brock. But Brock hasn't been the same since the bye week, and that's concerning. And I think that for Brock, against the Bears defense that is pretty good, like the Bears defense has kind of been very similar to what San Francisco's defense has been in regards to keeping them in football games while the offense can't find its footing. And the difference is the Bears defense can actually win you football games, whereas San Francisco's defense really can't win you anything at all. They'll keep you in games for 3.5 quarters and blow it in the fourth, right? So they're playing a pretty good defense. If you look at what the Bears do, though, that could help San Francisco and ultimately help Brock Purdy, they're not great against the run. You look at the Bears defense this year, they've allowed the 6th most rushing yards in football on the year. They've allowed 10 rushing touchdowns on the season, and they have tied for the 3rd most rushing yards allowed per carry. If that does not scream, hey, guess what we can do? Run the football. And if you run the football, hey, guess what you can also do? Get some play action. Now, unfortunately for San Francisco this year, the offensive line's been so bad that the play action really hasn't been available. The receivers aren't separating, thus you can't use play action. Teams are playing man coverage against this team, not playing much zone. It's really been, the Niners offense trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for the majority of the year. Now, some of that's personnel, for sure. Some of that's scheme. I think in this one, this Niners team, the last 2 games, really, they have put up the 2 worst performances I've seen under Kyle Shanahan. And maybe that's the reason why I'm like, well, 3rd time's a charm, right? It really can't be that bad for 3 weeks in a row, right? And I think that, this is a massive game for San Francisco for a lot of reasons, obviously, but they are going to have to run the football. And you look at who's starting in the backfield this week, it's not Chris McCaffrey. It's not Jordan Mason. It's rookie Isaac Guerendo. And I think that a lot of us, including myself here, was extremely high on Guerendo coming out of Louisville. I called him the perfect, running back for Kyle Shanahan's scheme. I thought him and Pearsall were two of the best picks in regards to scheme fits in the entire draft. Obviously, that has not come to fruition so far. I think ultimately it will, but not this year on a lot of fronts. But Guerendo getting his first NFL career start, his second ever start, whether it was in college or the NFL. His second ever start from college to the NFL. This is, you talk about Creed with arms wide open. This is with eyes wide open. Like, you got to go out there and you got to learn quick, brother. You got to grow up quick, and you got to be this team's RB1 the remainder, of the next 5 weeks or so if you want to be a part of the offense next year and maybe somehow force your way into a playoff spot. But I oddly enough, despite the starts and despite the lack of carries, believe in Isaac Guerendo a lot. Maybe it's me blindly believing in, my scouting and stuff, although I think Guerendo has looked pretty good in the short times he's played. Obviously, there's been some rookie mistakes here or there, but the more he plays, the more it seems like he's getting more comfortable and looks better. This year so far, he has 5.9 yards per carry. He has 2 touchdowns, including one last week against the Buffalo Bills. And the good thing about Guerendo, and very similar to Jordan Mason, is that they don't go down on first contact. Guerendo is a player that has 3.07 yards after contact. So I know McCaffrey was kind of starting to break out of his mold, and you started to kind of feel like, okay, here's Chris McCaffrey last week, and then bang, he gets hurt and out for the season. I do think there is a component of Christian McCaffrey in Isaac Guerendo, and the reason why I say that is because San Francisco has been desperately missing explosive plays on offense this year, whether it's through the air or on the ground. Mason was good for that for like 5 or 6 weeks early in the season, but since he got hurt on his shoulder against Seattle, he really hasn't been the same guy. There's been spurts here and there, and he should be getting more carries. Unfortunately, he's not going to play this week. But I think Guerendo can kind of bring the speed, the explosiveness back to the offense they've desperately been missing in the past month or so. Explosive play percentage, 10.4%. That's extremely high for a rookie this year. He also has a 4.33 speed. You just can't ignore there are factors that Guerendo brings to the offense that we've been begging to see. We have been slamming our heads just doof, doof, doof against the wall, being like, Kyle, play Pearsall more, get him involved, get him touches more. He has 4.4 speed. Get Cowling, he has 4.3 speed involved. Get Guerendo involved, 4.3 speed. You kind of you don't have any other option now. You have to play these guys, or you have to at least get them involved in the offense. And I think this is a great time for Shanahan to see what this draft class is about. You have 3 young players on offense that do things that other guys don't. Cowling and Pearsall and Guerendo do things that Debo and Jennings and even Kittle to a certain degree can't. That's explosive plays. Now, yes, Debo in previous years has been that guy. This year, he ain't that guy. Jennings is great on contested catches and mossing dudes, but he's not a great separator. He'll fight for extra yards, and he'll make clutch plays, and he'll be a reason why you win football games or in games, but he's not going to be the reason why with 2 minutes on the clock you have to score a touchdown. He's not the reason why you do it. You got to have explosive plays and big plays, and I kind of want to see Kyle utilize what the Packers do. Now, they're different offenses for sure, but very similar. They have Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, who did nothing tonight for my fantasy team. Thank you, Matt LaFleur. And Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft. I want to see Shanahan be enough. I'm so tired of saying only these 3 guys can play in this football game as receivers. I want to see this mix and match. I want to see end arounds and screens, and we kind of saw a little bit of that against the Bills, but part of me just says it was snowing. They had to do that. So I'm kind of begging and hoping that Shanahan, for once this year, is like, you know what? what do I have to lose? And I think we saw some of that against the Packers, but that game was just so far out of reach where it was like, why are you trying when you're down 28-10? It's not worth it. like the odds you come back are slim to none. Do that stuff early. And I think San Francisco, the Bears are not a good team. They're really inconsistent. They're up and down their roller coaster ride, very similar to San Francisco. Although San Francisco has a really hard time kind of getting off the tracks a lot, the Bears just do this all the time, up, down, up, and you're like, I don't know who this team is. I think San Francisco, if they can play a consistent 60 minutes of mediocre football, they should be able to win this football game. I firmly believe that. Now, can they? I don't know. And thank you, Papa J. He loves the stash. My beard's going out a little bit, a little bit there. I got the winter fur growing a little bit. I'll have to shave it soon. But thank you. I hope you're having a great night. A Niners fan says, fire Nick Sorensen, get a legitimate DC. We kind of already talked about that earlier. I don't disagree. I think that a little Bobby Saleh, Ulbrich, and Eberflus or some Belichick should be on the docket maybe this offseason. Yeah. Anyways, I got distracted by my mustache conversation there for a second. But this year's been really weird because, yes, they're not playing well, and ultimately San Francisco's 5-7. If you want to say they suck, they suck. They've been bad. They're not a good team this year. They don't have it by any means, and the odds to go to the playoffs are really slim. But I think this is a game. Funny enough, San Francisco loses 2 games back to back in rather humiliating fashion. You're just like, can it get any worse than this? And then you play the Bears, and I think that the Bears are a team that will give you a game, and they're also a team that will never really take a game over with, which is great for San Francisco, who really can't find their footing. I don't fear the Bears. Nobody should fear the Bears. Although Caleb Williams is playing better football as recent, I think this is a good opportunity for the Niners in the last 5 weeks or so of the NFL season to really get a glimpse of what the future looks like. Yes, Debo's there and Jennings and Kittle are still there, but, a lot of people talk about when you have a lost year, okay, what are you playing for? And I think for the offense, it really is about involving young players. And, okay, Pearsall gets shot to begin the year and couldn't get caught up to speed, okay? These 5 weeks, you are playing every single snap. You're getting up to speed by the time the offseason hits. No more excuses. You're ready to go once next year comes. I want to see the breakout to slowly begin for him. For Cowling, okay, you're kind of buried in the depth chart. Okay, why Yuke's done for the season. CMC and Mason done for the year. There's no reason as to why you shouldn't be getting 1 to 2 carries a football game, right? Now, you're a receiver, fine, but it's okay. This is supposed to be a dry game on Sunday unless that tsunami hits, which is crazy to think about. But still, the Niners really should be able to, or not should be able to, should get these guys involved in ways where, okay, you are almost force-feeding young players and saying, okay, if you make mistakes, so be it. I don't think it'll happen all the way because Kyle's well, we have a chance still. And maybe we see that, once they are, done in regards to maybe having a shot at the playoffs. But I want to see it now. I'm a fan that's look, if you're going to suck, at least be exciting. The worst thing in baseball is being 80 and 80 or 81 and 81 every single year and just being middling and average. That's why San Francisco, the Giants, have been I can't watch. They're boring and they're not really that good. If you're the Niners, okay, if it's a lost year for you, build towards next year to not being lost. Okay, if Ayuk isn't healthy, if Debo is gone, and if Jennings gets hurt for whatever reason, you have 2 guys in Pearsall and Cowling that can be ready to go from the jump next year and make that next leap for you to say, hey, if those guys are out, we're not missing a beat. And even if those guys are in, we're still a part of the offense and contributing in some sort of way. I'm hoping that Shanahan can be that way. I don't have a lot of hope or faith in that, but I think that's what kind of needs to happen. Like, hey, we're not good, but we're not going to be boring. We're going to be exciting. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to try new things. We're going to get ballsy. We're going to play the guys that can run 4-3, 4-4, and we're going to give these guys a chance to prove themselves. Sometimes, like, teams need that. It's like the Packers for a long time, weren't very good. But with Jordan Love, and they had all these guys come up together, it was like, okay, like, there's a reason why we started buying into the Packers. Like, okay, here come all these dudes. They have 5 different receivers that can beat you in different ways. They got Jordan Love. They have a good play caller. Okay, like, they're exciting to watch. They're not good yet. They're making mistakes, but they're in football games. And they might lose by 10, but at least, like, you can buy into what they're selling you. Whereas San Francisco this year, you really can't buy into what they're selling you because it's the same thing every single game. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that changes. Joshua Mars, 22, first off, thank you for joining us, Joshua, says, I just want to say that Kyle is tanking the season after seeing the Lions with so many injuries to their team, and yet they have the heart and the fight to win no matter who's in the field. They had Quan Alexander, former 49er, and Ezekiel Turner, former Niners signing of this past offseason that got cut during training camp or preseason, out there making plays. The Lions are a good team. The Lions are a team that can overcome, that are younger, that haven't had the heartbreak, that, unlike San Francisco, is still hungry and isn't broken and bruised after 3 consecutive long seasons. They're a team that's had 1 deep playoff run and are still healthy for the most part. Obviously, they have Aiden Hutchinson and many other guys are out, but ultimately, like, the Niners have had 3 seasons of insane deep playoff runs where the Lions have had 1. Call me when they've had back-to-back-to-back NFC Championship game appearances and gone to the Super Bowl and lost, then have the injuries. I get it. It's hard to look at that when, the situations seem the same, but context does matter. Joshua adds here that made me lose all respect in the Niners coaching staff, including Kyle Shanahan. I'm so disappointed he's trying to purposefully lose games now because things aren't going his way. I'm not in the business of accusing Kyle Shanahan of purposefully losing football games. I mean, they were trying to win early, and it wasn't working. So I don't think that's the case. I just think, like, they're just not good. Like, we've talked long and hard about how the offensive line has sucked all year for the most part, how they got to rebuild that, how the defensive line's not been great, and when you miss linebackers and you're missing safeties, like, poor play with injuries, like, they're hammered by injuries, which isn't the biggest factor, but is one for sure. You're hammered by injuries, then you're also getting poor play. Like, the Lions are hammered by injuries, but still getting great play. Like, that's the difference. And that's not all coaching. That is a lot of it personnel and stuff like that. What's going on, Niner Media? Hope you're having a great Thursday night. What else do we got here? Dude, you can't be losing pickleball like that, brother. You got me all hyped up saying, hey, you should try it. It's fun. And now I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I've still been sick, so I can't go outside very much. But, like, you're saying you lost. I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to be the San Francisco 49ers of pickleball. I can't be that. My goodness. Just trying to hold off and, cough and make sure I don't have to go see, or go to the movies with my wife this weekend to go see Wicked. I'm trying to avoid that still. She's been singing it all week. I just can't get it out of my head. Joshua says, this is Shanahan's fault. Partially. Like, yeah, partially is. All of it? No. But partially. It really is. But I have high hopes for this game. I think this game can be a little different. I think San Francisco wins this game, catch this, on a Jake Moody game-winning field goal. They didn't see that coming, brothers and sisters and others. whatever you want to do and call yourself. Man, like, I think they win this game 24-23, Jake Moody game-winning field goal. And I think they scrap and claw their way, and they're like, oh, 6-7. It's not too bad. And then guess who comes back in 2 weeks' time against the Rams? Dre Greenlaw and Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. And they go, well, hey, we got a shot. Then they lose that game by 25, and we all say, haha, what a joke that was, right? So I do think they win this football game. I've been pleasantly surprised by Jalen Moore and Ben Barch. I thought they were great against the Bears. Now, it's snowing, so, like, how much do you look into that? But I think Jalen Moore has been surprisingly, like, not Jalen Moore the past 3 games. He's looked competent for the most part as a left tackle. Again, he's not Trent Williams, but, like, he's not been bad. He actually has been pretty good. And I'm kind of like, okay, like, you can stay. You can be here next year. They want to bring you back on a cheap 2-year deal. I'll thumbs that up. No problem. And then Ben Barch, people forget that the Niners, like, made it a point to bring in Ben Barch, and they wanted to stash him off the Jaguars practice squad, and he's been hurt, like, all of last year. And I think a lot of it is, like, they believe in him. And I was really shocked that he was a practice squad player this year. You could tell that I think he's, like, say San Francisco, like, the Niners always love doing this. And I, like, stick with me here. They love the in-house option at, like, the most randomest places. So, like, you have a veteran, Aaron Banks, you don't want to pay. Oh, Ben Barch is having a pretty good year in the last game without him. Let's see how he does. If Ben Barch somehow in the next 2 games, say Banks is out for the next 2 games, plays well, I think he's basically, like, won the left guard position next year. Like, they're not going to bring back Banks. It's eerily similar to what the McKivitz and McGlinchey situation was like. Yeah, McGlinchey going to get paid big money. Well, McKivitz is there, and we don't mind him. And I think it's like, well, let's Band-Aid left guard, and let's go find starters elsewhere, whether it's an edge rusher or a center or a tackle. Like,
so, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
I think that's, like, a very realistic possibility where you're looking at 2025 of, Trent Williams, Ben Barch starting at left guard, hopefully a starting center that's not Jake Brendel, please, and then Pooney and McKivitz or somebody else maybe at tackle. But just Ben Barch as a starter next year, just keep that in the back of your brain. It feels like that's where things are trending if Barch can continue to play well. Man, Joshua really is going in on the YouTube chat here. First off, Bobo saying this is so out of pocket, I love it. I dominate all the senior citizens in pickleball at the courts. That's like flexing on going to Chuck E. Cheese and getting all the high scores on games. I've done that before, and I'm like, these kids are never beating the whack-a-mole 5 million point score that I just got. Imagine, like, flexing on a grandma, like, slamming the ball, and you're like, what? What, grandma? What? That's what it feels like when you beat San Francisco this year. It's like, all it is Jake Brendel staring up at you like, well, I don't know what to do. Call the life alert. And you're like, yeah, Jake, you suck. And he's like, I know. And Kyle's like, Jesus, Jake, you're terrible. He's like, but I can't put anybody else behind you because Feliciano's on freaking IR and no one else is back here. Nick Zakel? What the hell? It's like, God. I digress, though. Moving on to the defense. I said earlier the Bears defense is actually super underrated. And they are. They have lost 6 games in a row, mind you, and they've had their ups and downs throughout those 6 games. The offense obviously is not going to play with the majority of them. They have losses to the Cardinals and the Patriots and the Lions and the Vikings and the Commanders on a last-second Hail Mary, which kind of kicked off their downfall. But the defense really hasn't played that poorly. They're allowing about on average 23 points per game, despite their 6-game losing streak. They're 7th in the NFL in takeaways per game. Like, this is a pretty good defense that I think, yes, has some injuries. Jaquan Brisker is not going to play in this one, but they got some really good players out there. Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson's the guy that was out there yelling and celebrating during the Hail Mary that ended up costing them the game. But he's still a really good player out there in Chicago. Just kind of dumb sometimes. But they're a really good team. They're young. Their defense is pretty stout. They're fast. They're quick. They're physical. To quote Chris Forrester, again, they're fast. They're quick. They're physical. For the most part, an outstanding defense, a really big challenge for us. I think San Francisco, this is why this game is not going to be 30-32. The Bears can get into a shootout with you sometimes, but I just don't think this is a game where it's wow, the Lions and Bears game or the Vikings and Bears game where it goes to overtime and they make a big push in the fourth and in overtime to kind of make that game close. The Bears defense is going to keep San Francisco's offense at bay. At least for the most part. I do think San Francisco can score 26 points against them, and I wouldn't be shocked. They're a good defense, not a great defense. They can limit you, but they're not going to stop you. They'll keep you at bay, but they're not going to keep you out of the end zone. And I think for San Francisco, embracing the explosiveness is going to get them kind of going, hopefully. And they'll be able to find their way and hopefully beat the Bears this weekend. But the Bears offense, a lot of it starts with Caleb Williams. Caleb is, painting his fingernails out there, vibing, having a good time. But, they are so dysfunctional on offense. It's, staggering how lost they are at times. So, early in the year, they had Shane Waldron calling plays. And when he was calling plays, they had to have a team meeting with him involving Caleb Williams, the first-year quarterback out of USC, to, tell him how he wanted the offense to be run and, tell him, hey, can you get DJ Moore more involved in the offense for me? So then they fire Shane Waldron, promote the new guy, then the offense kind of picks up a little bit, then they fire Eberflus, the head coach, because the offense and the team falls apart post-Commanders loss. And they promote the interim OC to the interim head coaching spot. And it's just okay, it's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of head spinning. And even this past week, I think it was Caleb was I don't like what's happening, but I can't control it. I'm kind of just throwing my hands up what do you want me to do? But I will say this, that despite the issues they've had offensively, despite the ups and downs, the changes they've had offensively, since Thomas Brown, who is now the head coach, who was then the offensive coordinator, took over, Caleb Williams has actually been relatively good. He has 978 yards since Brown's taken over. 127 of those are passing, 151 of those are on the ground. He's completed 64.5% of his passes. That isn't too high, but it's not terrible. He has 5 passing touchdowns, 0 turnovers, and a 98.6 passer rating. It's not bad. Caleb, I don't love Caleb Williams. I would not people were proclaiming him to be a top 5 quarterback coming out of college, and it was what are we doing? You're putting these lofty expectations on him. And I will say this, for as great of a position as Caleb was coming into the NFL, it's the Bears. They have a good defense. They have Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Roma Dunze is now there. Wow. Despite their missteps, I don't really blame Caleb a lot. He's had his problems, sure, and early in the year, he was kind of tepid and timid and like didn't really know like when can I be myself who I was at USC. And then he got into a habit of being too much like himself at USC. And then it had so many changes. It's like, well, you know, Caleb really has like, he has kind of been more of a game manager at times. The issue is like sometimes he's not a great game manager. He won't turn the ball over. He'll just make dumb plays, you know, incompletions, be inaccurate and whatnot. Like, I don't fear Caleb, but ultimately it's like he's a rather mobile quarterback that's going to make mistakes. But, you know, he's a fine quarterback. Like, he's playing below Brock Purdy, but Brock's not playing great recently either. Like, Caleb's playing like a top 20 quarterback this year. And I think he's been more efficient in recent weeks. But you look at who they have offensive around him. It's like DeAndre Swift's been up and down, albeit playing better recently. Keenan Allen may or may not play this week. He practiced today, but although he's trending in a positive direction, I'm not sure. He's kind of been, you know, wishy-washy for them. There's talks he won't come back, but he wants to come back next year, and he believes in Caleb. So that's kind of like, you know, what's going to happen with him. Are they going to phase him out of the offense, or are they going to make him more of a, you know, kind of a massive part of it and kind of make him more of an important part? Rome Odunze has not been the number 9 overall pick level of player you thought he's going to be, but he's kind of not really fit into a role in the offense because of the massive changes they're making and the roller coaster ride they've been on. So then you mix in that DJ Moore, who has probably been this team's best receiver all year, but even then has had his frustrations, like throwing tantrum on the sideline because he's not getting the football and not really being involved in the offense a lot. He hasn't practiced the last 2 days, so it's like, is he even going to play? That makes the Bears a lot less dynamic, but it also might simplify the offense for them to a point where it's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. So there may be like an addition by subtraction in some way, although an odd way, maybe a way. But they have Cole Kmet, who I am like terrified of Devondre Campbell covering him. Like, I know Devondre was playing pretty good for a few weeks there. Like, he was playing serviceable, like starting caliber linebacker, but like the past 2 weeks has just been a reversion back to being a terrible linebacker. And kind of like the offense, it's like, okay, play Pearsall more, get him involved more. Guerendo's starting, great, I love this. Speed, explosiveness, let these guys make mistakes. Hopefully Cowan can get involved on certain plays and snaps and end arounds and screens and whatnot. Like, let these guys loose and see what they can do. Like, don't give the ball to Kyle Juszczyk. Give it to one of your younger players and hope they can make this thing work out for you. The same thing goes for the defense. You know, Renardo Green and Lenore's back this week, and Mustafa. I would play Tashawn Gibson. Maybe you want to give Jair Brown a break. He's been pretty bad. Sometimes guys just need to have a mental reset if they're young. That's happened to quarterbacks this year a lot. Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. I don't think San Francisco should be too afraid to bench Brown for a game and say, hey, look, we believe in you. We trust in you. You're our guy of the future, but you're just going through a rough patch to sit down for a week. Excuse me. That was pretty funny. Play special teams for a week or so and kind of get your bearings and then move on. I think that may be like a better choice to do than throwing them back out there and having them make the same mistakes they do every single week in the running game. And then Devondre Campbell, like, I don't want to see him play. Play D. Winters. Like, you're nearing a point where you're like, okay, Devondre Campbell, 1-year contract. Jordan Elliott, who isn't playing, but for example, 1-year contract, right? Chris Conley, 1-year contract. Like, don't be afraid to not play those guys. Rock Yassin, 1-year contract. Isaac Guerendo, 1-year contract. Like, you know, in an odd way, you're like, can Ambry Thomas play? Where's Darrell Luter Jr.? Like, I know he's hurt right now, but it's like, you almost wish those guys were healthy because you can say, hey, like, we can play these young guys, let them make mistakes, let them get their bumps out of the way, and hopefully they're better for it on the other side. And, like, in a game against the Bears where they have weapons everywhere, if DJ Moore plays especially, like Swift, Roschon Johnson, Allen, Odunze, Moore, Kmet, like, those guys are dangerous, albeit, you know, potential dangerous, yes, but in this year hasn't been as dangerous as possible. But it's like those guys can beat you. I'd rather be able to match people physically and with my speed and verticality compared to like, well, I played football for 10 years and sometimes I make good plays and other times, the most of the time, I don't. And that's Devondre Campbell. We're like, all due respect, man, like, I'm sure you're a great man and whatnot, but like, you're terrible at football this year. Like, terrible. And it's like, I'd rather play a kid that's like, I want to be quick and play fast with speed and like, I'd rather have Lightning McQueen than Doc Hudson sometimes, right? Where it's like, hey, it's new, it's flashy. Like, let these young dudes cook for a second. Even if they miss like 20 tackles, you're already doing that anyways. It's not like these guys have played up to a standard of like, well, we can't bench him. No, you can. Like, don't be afraid to make those changes, and hopefully it pays off for you. It's just like, look, like please, there are ways to like. The Niners haven't played good enough to be able to not play the young players, and I think that like needs to be like on the table. And I think they haven't really been open to that, and I'm hoping that changes because they have to be. Now, unfortunately for them, they're not going to have Nick Bosa, so it's Leonard Floyd and it's Yetur Gross-Matos, who I think was limited today in practice, which is like, okay, brother, like, you're never healthy. But no Nick Bosa. That seems to be the case. There's been some contradicting reports of will he play, will he not play, but if Nick Bosa plays, San Francisco historically is 54-24 when Nick Bosa plays. In just 10 of those games, they've given up 30 or more points. So when Nick Bosa plays, imagine that, they're pretty good on defense. They usually win football games when he's out there. If Nick Bosa does not play in this football game, well, history says they're going to lose because they are 5-12 historically without Nick Bosa. And 7 of those games, so in 7 of the 17 games without Nick Bosa, they've given up 30 or more points. In 10 of the 78 games with Nick Bosa, they've only given up 30 or more points. So a massive numerical difference and really a historical, like, no Nick Bosa, you're likely going to be walking away with an L. And San Francisco's defense as a whole this year has not played very well, kind of going for full circle, kind of back to the Nick Sorensen conversation. San Francisco's defense has now cratered after giving up 70-plus points the last 2 weeks combined, has cratered all the way down to 31st, just ahead of the Dallas Cowboys' terrible defense that has been missing Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Jerome Bland, and others for a lot of the year. 31st, just ahead of that Dallas Cowboys defense in red zone touchdown percentage allowed, which means when you get in the red zone against San Francisco, you're probably going to score. You just got to make sure teams can't get to the red zone. And unfortunately, San Francisco, in a day and age where the kickoffs are different, where the touchbacks are different, getting to the red zone against them has been relatively easy or easier than previous years. And unfortunately, when you get there, they are like a saltine cracker. A little bit of pressure, and they just fall apart. And let's hope the right now worst streak I've seen in football can end. The last 9 defensive drives for the San Francisco 49ers have ended up in touchdowns for the opposing teams. So that sucks. Like, literally. Like, it's terrible. Like, if I wanted to say bad words and naughty things to make my mom say, "Oh, Sterling," like, I could. That's how bad it's been. They've been terrible. And I think that this defense isn't going to be any better. The difference is they're just playing a more subpar offense. And they have, like, and to give the defense, I guess, some credit, you're playing the Bills and you're playing the Packers that are, like, 2 of the better offenses in football. And, they didn't play well in those games, but, like, you're playing down because you're not great. But then, like, they're also great offenses. So, like, whoop, like what do you expect to happen in those games? And, fingers crossed, and deep down, I don't know why I believe this. I think San Francisco wins this game. I think San Francisco finds a way to, whether it's good or bad, like keep their playoff hopes alive in a weird way. Like maybe it's a bad thing. Like, I'll tell you what. I'm going to say this, and I'm not sure if I mean it, but I'm going to say it anyways. My advice is don't use that for your significant other, usually when you get in trouble. But in this case, I can say it on my own podcast, so I'm going to do it. I would rather the Niners, in a season like this that is lost, where the odds you can climb your way back are very slim, I would rather San Francisco lose trying new things, playing the young players, letting them grow, and just making mistakes and getting Purdy and Pearsall and Kyle Guerendo comfortable together, ingrained in the offense, letting young guys play on defense and make their mistakes. I'd rather get blown out 30-10 than win a football game 17-16 and say, oh, we're 6-7, man, we got a shot. And playing Devondre Campbell and leaning on just Debo Jennings and Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk. And like, I love those guys. I'm sure they're great people and great players, and they have been for a long time in San Francisco. But, you know, maybe that's just like, hey, I just don't believe in this team this year. So it's like, you're already bad enough. You're 5-7. I don't mind being 5-8 if it means in the next 5.5 weeks, like, you're going to get them more prepared to become the next great version of the San Francisco 49ers and hopefully buck this idea that, well, the window is closed. Because I don't think it's closed. I just think that this team needs a reset. And I think that that's going to happen this offseason. But you can honestly say, like, you want to be in control of your own destiny, you can kind of start that reset, that retool now by letting guys like Pearsall, Cowan, Guerendo, Mustafa, D. Winters, and others play. Like, you can kind of jettison yourself into the offseason, get those guys closer to being where they have to be next year by playing them now. I think for a Niners team that is in an odd way playing for 2025, not this season, like, you have to look in the mirror and say, am I willing to do that? And I certainly hope they can. Mile High says, oddly enough, go Denver. Bo Nix looking like a dog out there. Cortland Sutton, who was almost a San Francisco 49er this year, looking like a dog as well. Jesus asks, Bears will be up to play because they want to win. I will say this about the Bears, like, they're out of the playoffs, and they're not playing for draft seeding, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think they really care about draft seeding. Like, they have the Panthers' second-round pick this year as well. I think they have their own first-round draft pick. They had 2 first-round draft picks past year, Williams and Adunze. Like, they're not playing for draft seeding. I think they're just playing to get Caleb more accustomed in the offense and, you know, hopefully kind of find the right gear to walk into the offseason, say, 7-10, and make a head coach out there, whether it is Ben Johnson or, I don't know, somebody else. Make them say, okay, like, I can work with that. I believe in that. I think that's kind of, you know, where the Bears are at. So, yeah, the Bears are trying to win this football game. Like, the Bears want to win every single game the rest of the year to make themselves a more viable option for the top-tier head coaching candidates. Like, that's what they want to do. They want to make sure the offense is rolling at a different level and the defense can kind of stay where they're at currently. Maybe better against the run defense, but, you know, whatever. And yes, Chris McCaffrey is out for the season, Mile High. He is done. But there was a report today that said if they make the playoffs, he'd eye to come back. And I'm like, look, dude, man, like, you know what? Just to save Chris McCaffrey from himself, just go ahead and lose a game and be like, oh, season's over with. Like, like, look, Christian, we love you. We appreciate you. You had that amazing Instagram post that all of us going like, is he going to retire? And he's obviously not, but it's like, just take it easy. To quote the great Drake Bell on, well, probably shouldn't say that nowadays, yikes. But to quote Drake and Josh, well, take it easy, man. Take it easy. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much, Mile High. Papa J, Kim, Jesus M, Niners Media, Kawachipto is in here, Bubbo is in here, Joshua Mars 22 was filling up the YouTube chat. Couldn't get to every single one of them, but he was like, hey, Kyle Shanahan, you're a little stinky poo. And a lot more stuff I can't say, but it was all great. I love it. I appreciate it. It was awesome. Thank you all so much for watching, listening. Hope you like, share, subscribe, leave that review. Tell your friends about the show. Thank you, Frank Weber and Keys in the YouTube comments. You guys are awesome. Hope you had a wonderful Thursday night. And what do you think? How do you think this game goes for the San Francisco 49ers? Can they win? Will they lose? I don't know. I think San Francisco wins 24-23. Tell me down below in the comment section what you think and how you think this game plays out. And are you full steam ahead? I am willing to lose with the youngsters over barely scraping away some wins with these old one-year contract dudes that may not even be here next year. I am on the former. I'm ready to go with the youth movement, and let's move into this year, end the year right, and go into 2025 saying, hey, we're ready to go. We're revitalized. There's the excitement, the punch these veteran guys need with these youthful players in here to hopefully make this next window they're going to have a wide one. Because I don't like the way they've played recently, and I certainly hate not winning a Super Bowl, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we can get some young guns in here. We can go out there, hopefully make some noise. Play spoiler. Beat the Rams. Beat the Cardinals. Just make them suck. Wouldn't it be great to ruin the Rams season? Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be awesome? That would be awesome. Just F the Rams. So sorry. Oh, same old sorry-ass Rams. Wouldn't that be great? We'll see him next week. They got the Bears this Sunday. San Francisco will win. Fingers crossed. Hope so. You never know. 24-23. Papa J likes the score. Bobo's giving the thumbs up. Papa J likes the show. Really appreciate it. Niner Media says, rather play the young guys. We are not a Super Bowl contending team this year. And Mile High says, I'd be listening the whole time. You could comment. Sorry, bro. Next time I'll comment more. Hey, Mile High, get involved, brother. I'm reading every single comment that I can, where I'm not going to get text from my mom being like, Sterling, why are you saying bad words on your show? But here we are. It's going into Friday morning. It's 10:06 p.m. Thursday night. Hope you had a wonderful Thursday. Hope you enjoyed the show. My name is Sterling Bennett. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review. Follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or the Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. If you want to watch your Niners play or you want to go see them in person, if you're a Bears fan, if you're a Broncos fan, if you want to watch any NFL game, if you want to go see Wicked live on Broadway or go to a concert, go to SeatGeek.com and use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And if you're like me and you're sitting on your phone all day like, is Nick Bosa going to play? When is Trent Williams' injury report going to be released? I'm on SportsSpider.com, your one-stop shop for your favorite teams, latest news, podcast, articles, tweets, and everything about your favorite teams in one place just for you. SportsSpider.com. Click that link down below in the description or go to SportsSpider.com. All right, Sunday, the season is either going to continue or it's going to end. Can San Francisco somehow find a way to make it to 6-7, or will they fall to 5-8 in 2024? Doesn't that sound terrible? Who would have thought? I wouldn't have thought. Who would have thought? Anyways, hope you enjoyed your Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your football Sunday. And, my name's Sterling Bennett. And as always, stay faithful.